out.
So who do you mean by what is this group of people that is going to rise up, Larry? Is this going to be very similar to what happened with social media and the legacy media, where we saw this slow transition from we all believed what they're, I mean, some of us, not all of us, believed what they were saying, really like since the election of Trump in 2016, and then slowly but surely you start saying things and you're like, wait a second, like, is that guy on TV really telling me like, like it is? And then slowly but surely people start to wake up. And the pandemic exacerbated things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like they really got a lot of things wrong, right?
Oh,
And a
yeah.
lot of people woke up, and then eventually, before you know it, and I think it happened this year, there was
They were like, no, we want to stick with the crown. A third were like, no, that's bullshit. I mean, these people are telling us what to do. They're taxing us. They're living in our houses. They make us garrison these soldiers. F that. Tell them to pound sand. You have to decide. And then a third didn't really know what they wanted to do. They were just kind of living on their farms, not paying attention, from what I understand. And it's kind of like you had to stand up and decide, well, what am I going to fight for? Do I want to fight for self-government, or do I want to live under this crown? And there are people who believe in the state, believe in the federal government, believe in fiat money, and benefit from that system, and that's fine. They're entitled to do that. But the outcomes that they're producing aren't very good, are they? For most people, and
no, that no.
yeah, in fact, they're quite bad. If you dig down a little bit, interested and pay them to bend the policies and the rules in their favor. And so, the Fed has just totally dominated the economics discussion, and they've tried to make anyone. I mean, the Austrian model perfectly explains and predicts what's happened to our economy since the founding of this country. And the book takes you through that if you're willing to wade through. There are two chapters that some people have told me they're kind of the rough sledding, because I really dig into the history. I start at 1789. I take you through all the financial developments up to the present day. And if you look at it, the Austrian model could have predicted it and explains all of it. And the Keynesian model is wrong and doesn't predict any of it and doesn't explain all of it or any of it. And it's almost laughable how bad they are. And I've got tons and tons of examples in the book. And yet they continue in power. And the reason they do is because but I know that because I understand where the bones are buried, and because I've been watching the system and studying it for years. And so I'm trying to give that knowledge to that dental hygienist, so that she will say the next time some sound money candidate comes around and says, we need to shut down the Federal Reserve, because we do. I'm going to vote for that person, because I think the Federal Reserve is causing a lot of my problems. I think the odds, the number of people in the United States who understand that today, it's very low, sadly. But if
Yeah.
they read my book, if they just critically read my book and think about it, I think they're going to come to the conclusion which I've come to, which is, oh my God, this thing is horrible. I mean, this is causing enormous pain for millions of people, and has for years, and we're ignoring every 4 years in terms of its new issuance. So we've never seen something like this before, ever. There's never been any form of money that could not be diluted. I mean, even gold, which used to be the soundest form of money, the supply grows at 1.7% a year. Multiply that times 55 years, and you've doubled the amount of gold on the Earth's surface. Okay. So, but Bitcoin, there'll only be 21 million. So as a result of that, this is just, it's a once in humanity. It's a paradigm shift. I mean, I don't know how, Sailor says it's like fire with Prometheus. I don't know. It's like air flight. I mean, people couldn't fly, and then suddenly people could fly. Do you know what I mean? Or people rode horses, and then suddenly there were cars, and, cars. I met a guy named Jim Grant. Some of the older listeners will know who he is. He's written a number of great books. He's a monetary economist. He's really a brilliant, charming guy. And yet he really shat all over Bitcoin. He said, well, it'll be money. Give me 1,000 years of history, and then maybe I'll consider it money. And I said, Jim, when people were wandering around and trying to jump up in the air, and then somebody invented a machine that allowed them to fly, did you have to wait 1,000 years to believe that the flight made sense? I mean, it was kind of, And he kind of just scoffed at me, and I was just like, how can somebody who's supposed to be a monetary expert miss the biggest development in the monetary field in 1,000 years? I mean, like the change from from coins to ledgers or banks. I mean, I think that people are going to be shocked what happens here, and as as we've all seen, I mean, some people, I mean, just the fact that it's over 100,000 has gotten a lot of people really salty because they just can't get their heads around it. But I would just advise them to get rid of their ego and bend the knee and understand. I mean, look, I don't have a lot of love for Larry Fink because I think he's a kind of a creepy guy and a fiat master. But I'll give him credit. I mean, everyone knows who I'm talking about. He's the guy who runs BlackRock. It's $11 trillion largest asset manager in the United States. I'll give him credit. He looked at it, thought about it, studied it, obviously had some people teach him about it and said, you know what? This thing's going to work. And I either got to get on board or I'm going to get left behind. And the block size wars, and there'd been forks earlier and so on and so forth. And then 20, it worked. We took off with all the money printing because it responded to that and as a sound form of money. But then, the tightening brought it all back down and SBF blew us up. But it's now there's now almost nobody that's not aware of its existence. I mean, here's a perfect example. This morning I was reading the Wall Street Journal. Nick Timiraos was speaking about Fed policy, and he talked about how whether it was tight or loose was in part determined by things like this, the screaming price of Bitcoin. I don't think those were his words, but I mean, and for Bitcoin to be mentioned in an article about Fed policy, I mean, that's kind of an Overton window shift, right? This because everybody, most human beings, they care about their future, they care about their children's future, and if they have savings, they know that what they do with those savings will determine the quality of that future. And so this is a book aimed right squarely at that subject, and showing how the system is set up to rob them of their savings, and yet they've got a really great tool that they can fight back with that will then allow them to actually conquer and beat the system. And by the way, as we all conquer and beat it, we can fix it so that all that theft stops. So it's a good thing. It's a very good positive thing.
Well, I am, yeah, it's a great stuff. And, Larry, always an honor to have you on the show. Always loved the conversation.
You're one of the original podcasts that I got involved with, and I've really enjoyed it. It's, we share bus rides in El Salvador, and you've been a good friend. So
absolutely, Larry. Well, an honor like always. I think the best is yet to come, and I'm positive we're going to cross paths and the many Bitcoin conferences in 2025. And
absolutely.
Congratulations, you completed this super quick. And of course, guys, this is going to be